you, Crawford. This is Kriss Marion from Wisconsin Farmers Union and Circle M Farm, and her colleague Meg Pokorny from the new Pecatonica Pride Watershed over in the Peck Basin. We're very excited to have them here today. Welcome them.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. You know, you're a value of mine because I can plant in my field today, and I am here instead. So I am so delighted to be here. I'm Kriss Marion. I am an organic vegetable CSA farmer in Blanchardville on 20 acres, 2.5 of which are in production. So that gives you some idea of my reach in the watershed. I'm also the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union chapter that serves Green Rock and Lafayette County. So I work with a lot of farmers and people who are rural advocates. And I guess for those reasons, I started the Pecatonica Pride Watershed Association with some friends this past year. But the other reason I started that group is because of this summit. I came last year, and I think it was your last summit. I came because I had a lot of friends involved in this organization. Peg Schaefer, who's not here, but she was super geeky about you guys and the stuff you were doing with kids. And Bethany was involved, and so I thought I would check it out. Plus, I really like collaborative efforts, so I wanted to see what you guys were doing to bring people together. But what happened for me at this summit was Jim Amrine was incredibly inspirational in his love for bugs and weird fish I had never heard of. I will tell him that when I see him on Monday. And I was so inspired that I went home and looked him up and looked up watershed assessment and realized that my watershed, the Lower East Branch of the Peck, had had no attention since 2011. And so no assessments and everything it was quite impaired. And I was dismayed. So I emailed Jim and I was like, hey, I want to get to know you. You're awesome, and would you come play in my watershed a little bit? So this is before I had a watershed association. So I've kind of pestered him for a year, and we had a wonderful drive around the other day, our watershed, and looked at all the streams that we could work on together, and now we will have a wave training at the end of May. So we're super excited to be plugged into the sort of things you guys are doing, and we are your little sister. We really want to learn from you. And my gosh, it's so inspiring. Dick and Meredith and all of the ways you guys understand your water is just what we want to do. So another reason I started the watershed group was because Tom Quinn spoke here. And he's actually, I know him well. He's the executive director of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. So we've worked together on a lot of things, but I did not know his story with the Red Cedar Watershed Association. And I was pretty transfixed by his talk. I just felt like the way that group brought farmers and landowners and irate Lake Association people together to work productively was really incredible. And I guess I felt at that moment between Jim and Tom, something was going to happen along these lines. If you haven't looked up Red Cedar, do you guys know this Watershed Association? I think their summit this year, their motto was land, water, and people coming together. That gives me chills. I just think that's the most amazing motto. And their promotional material said, do you farm? Do you live in town? Do you manage residential, commercial, or public property? Do you enjoy fishing, swimming, boating, hiking, canoeing? Do you think the economic and environmental health of this beautiful region is important? Who doesn't want to sign on to that? That's everybody. And that is my goal with our Watershed Association. And Meg is going to talk a little bit more about that. But you guys have been just a great model of that in a neighboring community. I think what's enthralling is the multi-stakeholder approach. And I think what's interesting is the idea that people are coming to be a part of the Red Cedar workshops, and people are coming to my group and this group from a number of motivations. They're really not all the same. All the people at the table and all the people in the room don't have the same motivations for being there, but I think that the magic happens when everybody comes together with their different motivations and recognizing they don't have to be the same motivations, and that you can get great things in motion. I think that good work will happen when you get people together. I don't think we're always going to see the amazing change that we hope for quickly in the watershed, but I think we'll see a change in our communities that is meaningful and hopeful for our watersheds long term. So let's talk a little bit about motivations here while I'm on it. The DATCAP grants, which I think you all probably know, DATCAP is now offering $20,000 to any multi-stakeholder group that has at least 5 farmers signed on ahead of time who make, I think, $6,000 off their property a year, and it doesn't matter how much land they control. They can win $20,000 for their group, which is next to nothing when you think about it, but is really, any amount of dollars is kind of motivating to just get you thinking about it. And it was motivating to me when these grants came out because I had already been here. I had already been thinking about what you were doing. I'd already been thinking about what Tom was doing, and $20,000 was like enough reason to pull an all-nighter and write up a grant application. And there's a lot of folks in the same boat as me who are like, why not? Why not give it a try? And I think that the motivations are really all over the place. So some of the motivations I'm seeing are, like I said, very upset lake association owners, which is who drove things in the Red Cedar. It was the lake associations who realized their property values were being lowered because of land use around the lakes was creating these terrible algal blooms that they couldn't overcome. And some of the motivation now, frankly, is promotional. Peninsula Pride in Kewaunee County is a group that pretty much Tammy Baldwin forced to happen because the EPA was being sued over their inaction in Kewaunee County, where they have nearly 40% of the wells are undrinkable. That might be the motivation and inspiration, but that group is really going to do amazing things. I think some other motivations are promotional because Kewaunee has given some land uses a bad name. And so there's some proactive forming of these watershed groups to be a promotional, maybe a bit of a stunt, but in the end, they're going to get good work done too. So I want to talk about my motivation. And this is it. This is our Facebook page. And let's see if I can make this.
You can hear frogs.
You guys probably know what all that stuff is. I have no idea, except for the peepers. But that is why. Oh my gosh, we're gonna do that too this year. I have played that on my own phone to myself about 50 times since yesterday afternoon when I took it. I am extremely in love with my spring peepers. I live in a bottom, and like I said, I control 20 acres. 10 of that is a wetland that I'm actually gonna do some stream bank work on this year, and 2.5 is in crops, and then I have this slough and a little pond, and it is deafening. The peepers are deafening this time of year. Any of you guys with a bottom know that this is peak peeper time, and it's so much fun. And when I talk to people about this, some people like Jacob came up to me last year and said, I remember peepers on my place when I was little, but we don't really hear them as much anymore. And a lot of people have come up to me and talked about the peepers they remember, but they don't have anymore. And so for me, this is why I want to be a part of a collaborative effort, because a couple years ago, I was picking raspberries in my CSA garden, and I felt something jump on my arm, and I thought it was a Japanese beetle because I have gobs of them in my organic raspberries. And I looked down, and it was a peeper, and it was hanging on me and looking at me, and I was looking at it, and it was looking at me. And I don't want to say the frog spoke to me, but something spoke to me. and what it said was, it is not enough that you're going to take care of your 20 acres well. If you want to hear me for the rest of your lifetime, you're going to need to work with your neighbors and with your neighboring counties and with all kind of people to get this done. And so I knew that I was committed from that point 2 years ago to doing something. I ran for county board for that reason. I started talking about the watershed and about land use and about our wells. Found out that 25% of Lafayette County wells are undrinkable because of bacteria. So we're not that far behind Kewanee. We're just not in the news. And so this is super important to me on a really personal level. But for some people, they have different motivations. Some people have come to the table to work with me because they're afraid of me and what and what I'm bringing to the newspaper. And but I don't care. I'll work with anybody regardless of their motivation. And I think we'll get something done. And we'll probably end up being friends if we have fun on the water together. So yeah, so our group is interesting. Like I said, it was just kind of an all-nighter with Southwest Badger's help to get the original grant. But in order to get the grant, I needed to get commitment from 5 neighbors that connected to each other. And I'm friends with a lot of people. But actually talking explicitly about conservation with my conventional neighbor farmers was like, I mean, they all love me and respect me for taking care of land, but this isn't a conversation we regularly have. So just going through the process of applying through the grant and being explicit about conservation goals in our neighborhood was already progress. I mean, really, we're already winning from the time we applied for that grant. And now we're having a lot of conversations, some of the most significant of which have been with community groups. Our group did not start with Lake Association people. If you know Lafayette County, we don't have any wealthy lake owners. Our like Pecatonica, the Pecatonica developments are the trailer parks. That's what's along the river. We don't have anybody with an investment in water to stand up for us. It's a lot of farmers. We're the most ag-dependent county in the state. But we are talking, and it's super awesome. And we're talking a lot with people. What we did with our group was we said, who's already doing a good job with the water? Who already cares about the river? Let's get them all together at a table and see what we can make up. So I'm going to introduce Meg. She is with we're both members of the Blanchardville Women's Club. And I really think the reason we won the grant, and I must say we also kind of wrote the same grant with DATCAP to get an RCPP in our area, which is another wad of money for Lafayette County. And I think a lot of that had to do with the partnerships that we had built to write the Pecatonica Pride grant. So the reach of these conversations is already pretty significant. We've got a big pot of money coming to us from the RCPP that just had to do with the hope that these organizations could work together. So Meg is going to talk to you about why the Women's Club cares about this stuff.
Okay, first, me. My connection to the Lower Sugar River is an ancient one because I'm getting older. I grew up in Beloit. And one of the fun things to do in Beloit in the winter was ice skate, and our favorite place to ice skate was the Sugar River.
Wait. I just remembered we have to do this.
It's all right, I can talk.
No, we're recording you for prosperity.
Dad would drive us north of Beloit, and we skated on the river. At first to brush the snow off, and then it was clear enough that you could see the fish underneath. And we could skate and chase fish. Now that was, I guess, a healthier river. I don't know. But anyway, that's my connection to the Sugar River. Then I went on the dark side. I married somebody and moved to Illinois. So, but after my family was raised, I'm
doing this. Just ignore me.
All right.
We're ladies. We can just get right in.
Kids grew up, and I can't regained my senses. My husband and I moved to a beautiful part of Wisconsin near Blanchardville. Now, we live out in the country. We have a gorgeous small house on a prairie. It's heaven. But then I discovered that heaven had some problems. The first problem was water, and concerns about water and groundwater and surface water, and oh my gosh. And then this beautiful, perfect little town, I discovered that people were pedaling underwater as hard as they could to keep it going, because little towns, small towns in Wisconsin, have to do everything they can just to survive. So 2 problems: the town that I loved and was growing to love, and water. Water, oh my gosh. So I became very involved with the Women's Club, and about the same time Kriss became very involved with the Women's Club, and well, I met Kriss, and now you know Kriss. So when she came to me and said, well, I want you to sign on with this Pecatonica Pride Watershed idea. We can get these grants, blah, 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 blah. I realized that this was an answer to 2 problems. Because she was starting with the idea that it would be relationships between the groups of people that interacted with in Blanchardville, the farmers and the town people. The people we hope to attract to move near the town and send the kids to our school. The people we wanted to come in the summertime and enjoy the Peck. All those people could and would be interested and as motivated as we are for improving the quality of the Pecatonica River. So it was like win-win. These people had a reason to care, and I thought they would, based on my experiences. So can I talk about the meeting that we had at your house? So Kriss had a meeting primarily with these 5 farmers that she needed to have in the grant, but then she had a second meeting, and I didn't really, well, it was a meeting. We go to meetings. Kriss has an enormous table in her kitchen. I think it seats 20 or more, and I think we had more than 20 people. We had 25 people on a beautiful Sunday. We blew each other's minds. We couldn't believe there were so many groups, local groups, people I knew, Trout Unlimited, the women who are, can I say it? I'm going to say it. Okay. So we have a group of men in Blanchardville, natives, they've done this for years, who have a clean up the river day in the spring. And that involves a lot of beer, but they do get a lot of cleanup done because a lot of people like to float and canoe and things on the Peck right there. Well, the women were not real happy about the fact that they were excluded from this all-male event. So they have their own event in the fall. Excuse me, I don't want to upset you, but it's called No Peckers on the Peck. It's not just fun. They have a good time, and all the women are invited. Okay, but that gives you an idea of what this meeting was about. It was a very serious meeting, and people listened to each other. And I listened to stream bank improvement discussions between Trout Unlimited and other people, and no, you should do it this way and that way. The important thing was these people cared. They cared about what we were all talking about, water, and specifically the Peck. And in exchanging ideas, they cared and they made more connections to each other, which could only benefit this small town and this area. So that's my piece. That's really what I have to say, Kriss.
So
okay?
Our model, yes. Is she amazing? So our model is basically to have dinners on people's farms who are doing practices already to improve the water. But the meetings aren't just going to be the farmers. They're going to be the farmers and the these groups and the Girl Scouts and whoever wants to come. So we hope that just by having conversations on farms, looking at what's being done and what could be done better, that the conservation will become contagious. My goal, and I believe this is true, and if you read Michael Pollan or if you're into those kind of writers, we believe that heroes can be, the heroes of the conservation movement and really of the climate change reversal movement are going to be farmers. They control the land and they have the ability to hold the carbon and make the change. And we want to begin to elevate as heroes those farmers who are doing that already in our community and give other farmers the opportunity to be those heroes. We also want to let people in town do that by creating pretty rain gardens and such like, but we're going to start on the farms, and I convinced Wisconsin Farmers Union to give us a grant to pay for lavish meals. out on those places. And our first one is actually coming up on, I have sheets here of our little beginning calendar. April 28th, we're going to go out to Steve and Mary Thompson's place. And I didn't realize this, but apparently Steve is a tremendous giant of conservation in Iowa County. And we're going to take our farmers and our community leaders there and dream about the future. And this is how we see the future. I'm going to give you that. This is super fun. Oh, we're not rock stars. We're not not real college. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I talk about this stuff all the time, and I have a friend who's a muralist, and she was like, I want to do your first sign. So we talked about it a lot. One of the things that we want to do in the town of Blanchardville, they have a waste treatment plant in the park, and they have cropland that they rent out next to the waste treatment plant that is right next to the Peck. So all of the runoff every year and all of the effluent is going right into the Peck at Blanchardville. We want to plant that in a monarch reserve, and we're talking to the village about it, and they're open to it. I just need to come up with a plan and a way to fund it that they don't have to touch. So we are starting with monarchs, and then I don't know if you can see this, but all of the farmers that are in my original group, they all have a passion for trout streams. So our big thing is going to be getting more trout happening, and we really believe that can be an economic driver for our little town. We have some awesome bars. We would get more people in the bars with their fishing poles. And then we have, I'm pretty sure this is a pecker on the Peck, but it's kind of unisex there. Everybody's welcome to paddle down the Peck. And anyway, that's our starting point, and our dream is to improve the Peck between just Blanchardville and Argyle and lift the fortunes of those towns at the same time. So wish us luck.